Good morning, church. Good morning. Well, let's connect here a little bit. And I'm trying to see what's going on here. The twins are in church. See that back there? Oh, and their parents, and the other two blessed kids, and cousins, and there's back there. You know what? It makes sense to have twins, I think. I've always thought those baby carriers that have been around for what now? 20, 30 years. Those baby carriers, you see, they're so out of balance carrying one of those. So I remember, doing chores. It was much better to carry 2 5-gallon pails than it was to carry one. So I think it's smart that you had twins. You're all balanced out now. Help you out there. Make good dumbbells. Right? I mean, in this sense. Okay, I better move on. And we got Bob up from Missouri. It's good to see you, big guy. Or Missouri or Arkansas. Missouri. Okay. Make sure. Didn't know how far south you were. So, anything else I should know about? Something else I should know about? I know we'll have the actual announcements later on, but Kathy Box, are you in here? You know what? Kathy might be, she's in the back there. Kathy, you're going to have some kids today. So recruit some help. Okay? You're going to have some kids today. That's a good thing. Well, let's stand and use some vocal calisthenics here. Warm ourselves up. Jesus, let your come here, let your will be done here, in us. Jesus, there is no one greater, you alone are Savior, show the world love. King of heaven, come down. King of heaven, come down. Let your glory reign, shining like the day. King of heaven, come. We are children of your mercy, asking for your glory. In us, we cry, Jesus, set our hearts toward you. Every hour see you, lifted high. King of heaven, come down. King of heaven, come down. Let your glory reign, shining like the day. King of heaven, come. King of heaven, rise up. Who can stand against us? You are strong to save in your mighty name. King of heaven, come. 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 King of heaven, come down. King of heaven, come down. Let your glory reign, shining like the day. King of heaven, come. King of heaven, rise up. Who can stand against us? You are strong to save in your mighty name. King of heaven, come. Amen, amen. Hey, who can stand against us? No one, amen. Okay, you have to take twice as long before you sit down, looking around and giving some people some smiles. We're going to go twice as long today. We're getting closer to being able to greet each other normally. One of these days.
Okay, if you take your bulletins out, just real quickly. Several things going on at 3 o'clock. There's a business meeting, so if you're an active participant or you're a member here, I'd encourage you to come to that. Tomorrow night up here at the prayer garden, we're going to have a time of prayer at 7 o'clock, so we encourage you also to come and be a part of that. Ministry teams are meeting in February, so if you're a part of the ministry team, just expect that you will get notified to come and be in that. And the big event, well, I don't know if it's an event or if it's an opportunity. I think it's an opportunity. The big opportunity is the Marriage Recharge seminar time together thing. It's for married couples, and we're going to have it downstairs, and Mark and Jody are going to lead it. And so I would just encourage you to come. It's free of charge, and so I would encourage you to come and be a part of that, and invite your neighbors that are having trouble. You know, the ones that you hear screaming every now and then. You still knock on the door and say, "Hey, come to Grace Baptist Church." We'll help. All right. So that's coming up too as well. Be available as well. This fellowship breakfast, Sunday school. You can see those kinds of things as well. So today the big thing is our meeting, our business meeting at 3 o'clock. So please come and be a part of that. And let's pray. Father, thank you for this day that you've given us today. Thank you for the opportunities that are right before us, where you're at work, and give us eyes to see what you're doing. We don't want to be running around trying to open closed doors. It's just a waste of time. Help us to focus on you, to light our path and to give us direction. Thank you and praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.
I'm going to give just a little bit more of a shout out for the Marriage Recharge. Number one, I just want to make aware that the tent could be a little bit wider. Yes, we're certainly catering that to those of us that are married, but I also, Jody and I would like to invite the pastor's agreement on this for any couples that marriage could be in the picture. They're just trying to sort that out. I would really encourage you to come because number one, you'll definitely be given some tools in the toolbox, and number two, you'll get to know a lot more about that person during the process too. So it's not something for just couples that are in trouble. This is just people that want to keep investing in their marriage. And we're going to give you a commercial on this in just a moment here because we went ahead, we made a commercial for, we're going to be doing this 2 weeks before we start here at Grace. We are going to be up in Okoboji doing a 3-day event up there. And I just put a shout out that actually, if you'd like to get away amongst this COVID thing, they have figured it out at the Okoboji Bible camp up there. They figured out how to be socially distanced. You'll be served all your meals. It's $1.99 per couple. So if you want to get away and do this, and guess what? Here's one thing. Kim and Derek Davidson are going to be there. They've signed up for it. So someone that used to be in our church family, they're coming from Illinois to come up for that. And so we'd encourage you. Jody and I used to be on staff at this particular camp. It is a wonderful place. It is, I would say, kind of in the 2 diamond level camp level, you know, of motels. This is nice. Skywalks between things. I mean, it's a very nice setting. So we're going to give you a commercial on that and have some fun with this. It says Okoboji, so just take note. Give you that disclaimer. So where is it?
February 12th through 14th.
Yes. Sorry, Bob. Good catch.
Mary Dollar Park, take 556.
Hi, we're Jody and Mark Stevenson from West Des Moines, Iowa.
39 years of marriage, 2 kids, 4 grandkids, and a lot of life from full-time ministry to owning our own business.
That was it. and it's done. And the rest of it.
I don't know what happened.
It's okay.
Marriage a la carte, 557. Take.
What it's still in you is, oh, there.
Mary Dollar Park, 556.
7.
Hi, we're Jody Stevenson from West Des Moines, Iowa.
39 years of marriage, 2 kids, 4 grandkids, and a lot of life from full-time ministry to owning our own business.
Currently, we're preparing to be your chefs for a 4-course marriage refreshment.
And guys, it won't be all quiche and cucumber sandwiches. We're bringing some prime rib.
All our menu choices are organic, made from scratch, real live food, and you get to choose our meal. So give your spouse an extra special Valentine's Day present and register today.
We're looking forward to helping you put a little spice in your marriage.
See you in Oklahoma.
Man, that's almost corny. Let's go on. Let's go on from there. But we do encourage you. We want here at Grace, we want the families to be encouraged, and the leadership's decided it's time to have that meeting, the couples, and encourage families, especially during this time that we just had. But let's stand now and continue in our worship time and be reminded that we are not slaves to the things that are around us, that are going on around us. You unravel me with a melody. You surround me with the song of deliverance from my enemy, till all my fears are gone. I no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. From my mother's womb, you have known me. Thou hast called my name. I've been born again into your family. Your blood flows through my veins. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. You split the sea so I could walk right through. My fears were drowned in perfect love. You rescued me so I could stand and sing. I am a child of God. You rescued me. You split the sea so I could walk right through. My fears were drowned in perfect love. You rescued me so I could stand and sing. I am a child of God. No longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I am a child of You belong to God. You have not accepted the teaching of the false prophets. That's because the one who is in you is powerful. He is more powerful than the one who is in the world. So what can I say? And what can I do? I offer this heart, oh God, completely to you. You stood before creation, eternity in your hand. You spoke the earth into motion, my soul now to sing. You stood before my failure, and carried the cross for my shame. My sin weighed upon your shoulders, my soul now to sing. So what can I say? And what can I do? But offer this heart, oh God, completely to you. So I walk upon salvation, Spirit alive with me. I'd like to declare your promise, my soul now to sing. So what can I say? And what can I do? But offer this heart, oh God, completely to you. What can I say, Lord? So what can I say? And what can I do? But offer this heart, oh God, completely to you. I stand with arms high, heart offended, near all of the one who gave it all. I stand, my soul, Lord, you surrendered all. I am is yours. I stand with arms high, heart offended, in awe of the one who gave it all. I stand, my soul, Lord, you surrendered all. I am is yours. So I stand with arms high, heart offended, in awe of the one who gave it all. I stand, my soul, Lord, you surrendered all. I am is yours. all I am is yours. Please.
You are not a God created by human hands. You are not a God dependent on any mortal man. You are not a God in need of anything we can give by your plan. That's just the way it is. You are not a God created by human hands. You are not a God dependent on any mortal man. You are not a God in need of anything we can give by your plan. That's just the way it is. You are God alone from before time began. You are on your throne. You are God alone. And right now, in the good times and bad, you are on your throne. You are God alone. You're the only God whose power none can contend. You're the only God whose name and praise will never end. You're the only God who's worthy of everything we can give. You are God, that's just the way it is. You are God alone from before time began. You are on your throne. You are God alone. And right now, in the good times and bad, you are on your throne. You are God alone. You're unchangeable. You're unshakable. You're unstoppable. That's what you are. You're unchangeable. You're unshakable. You're unstoppable. That's what you are. You are God alone. From before time began. You are on your throne. You are God alone. And right now, in the good times and bad, you are on your throne. You are God alone. You're unchangeable. You're unshakable. You're unstoppable. That's what you are. You're unchangeable. You're unshakable. You're unstoppable. That's what you are. You're all I You're all I ever need. You're all I want. Help me know you are here. Draw me close to you. Never let me go. Lay it all down again. To hear you say that I'm your friend. You are my desire. No one else will do. Nothing else could take your place. Feel the warmth of your embrace. Help me find a way to bring me back to you. You're all I want. You're all I've ever needed. You're all I want. Help me know you are near. You're all I want, Lord. You're all I want. You're all I've ever needed. You're all I want. Help me know you are here. Help me know you are here.
Father, I don't know why it is that we need to be reminded of that. We are on this side of heaven with mortal bodies that are weak and have pain and have emotions that go beyond us at times, and we need to know that you're here and that you still want to call us friend. Father, I admit, in days spent alone at home, I need to hear friend. And Father, I'm very thankful that you go beyond it being virtual. I really can feel your very presence, and I thank you for that right now. And I'm sure there's many here that agree with me. In Jesus' name, amen.
Kids, you can head downstairs. Adults, you take out your Grace Notes outline. I want to continue in our look at the book of Hebrews. Today, we're going to open the door, I guess you will, to about a 3-chapter discussion on the high priest and Jesus as the high priest. Before we get to that, I think there's maybe a little bit of background that we could do. In Exodus chapter 28, God tells Moses to bring Aaron to him. And as Moses responds and brings Aaron to him, God declares to Aaron, Moses, and to the rest of the congregation, the rest of the Jewish people over there, declares to them that Aaron is going to be the high priest. He's the one that's going to take on that office, take on that role. And the high priest's responsibilities are twofold. One, to serve God, and two, to intercede for people. If you read through that chapter, it's fascinating because Moses is doing weird stuff, like he's putting blood on the earlobe, and he's putting this vest on that's got 12 stones on it. He's putting this turban on it with this marker on the forehead of the turban, and he's putting this undergarment on with the Urim and the Thummim inside of the garment. Basically, how they try to determine God's will and God's purpose. And then over top of it is this beautiful robe and the sash. I mean, every single solitary thing in the greatest detail is written out there so that we would know that by his dress, by how he looks, he is definitely the high priest. And you can tell he has bells that go around his robe so that he jingles when he walks. And the reason for that is that he's the only one who can go into the Holy of Holies. He's the only one. No one else is admitted in there. Once the tabernacle is set up, once the Shekinah glory of God enters the tabernacle, that's it. That's reserved for the high priest and the high priest alone. There's a veil in front of the front of the holy place, and only the priest goes in there, and he has the bells on in case he stops ringing. If he would happen to have a heart attack or something, he'd say something wrong, I don't know, they would know that he was immobile. and they would have a rope tied around his foot so they could pull him out, because nobody could go in there. Have you ever had a place that you couldn't go into? Just couldn't go. I was going to go into Home Depot about 4 months ago. And I jumped out of my truck and I took off and I trucked through Home Depot. And the very first thing I got stopped going in the entrance to Home Depot. I got stopped and the guy says, "You can't come in this entrance." And I said, "Why'd you speak?" And he said, "Where's your mask?" And I said, "I don't have a mask." He says, "You'll have to leave the store, sir." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" The entrance is around, so I have to walk clear around the whole store and come in the entrance on that side of the store, which makes a whole lot of sense because it's marked exit. And then I have to come in that door, and I have to get my mask on before I can even come in that door. And then if I want to leave, I can't leave out that door. I have to leave out the door that says entrance. And I left. And I haven't been back since. Because I was frustrated with the fact that I couldn't enter my store and I couldn't do what I had come to do. I had to stop. I was stopped. That's the holy place. The people were stopped. They couldn't go in there. If they had walked in there, they would have been eliminated immediately. So only the high priest could go in there, and the high priest could only go in there one time a year. And he'd have to take a sacrifice in with him, the blood, and he would sprinkle it on the utensils in the holy place, and he would put it on the mercy seat, which was the Ark of the Covenant, had a mercy seat on the top of it, and he would sprinkle the blood of the bull on the mercy seat and invoke God's mercy upon the people and his forgiveness of their sins. And it was serious business. And on the day that they did it, there was a whole day long celebration. There was a whole day long service. And then that evening, the high priest would go in and he would offer. But he couldn't offer the blood before he offered a sacrifice for himself. So he would have to offer that sacrifice for himself, and then he would go in and he would offer the sacrifice for the people. They had a goat that they had down there, and the high priest would lay his hands on the goat, and he would pray that that goat would take on the sins of the nation of Israel. And then they would take the goat and they would turn it loose. It's called a scapegoat. And the goat would run, and if you saw it, you had to stay away from it because it was carrying the sins of the people. Incredible symbolism, incredible pictures that God is painting for his people about his holiness, about the priesthood and how critical it is in their relationship to God and in their walk with God. Without the high priest, without the sacrifices, the sins of the nation would have just continued to build and build and build. And they would not have seen any kind of forgiveness. So now, our author in Hebrews brings that picture into our world. And he talks about Jesus and the fact that Jesus takes on that role of high priest. Let's take a look at it. Chapter 5. Again, when we're talking about those little numbers that are in there that don't mean anything, well, they don't mean anything. So the conversation starts in chapter 4, verse 14. Since we have a high priest, Jesus, who has passed through the heavens, let us hold fast our confession. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weakness, but one in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin. Let us then with confidence draw near to the throne of grace, that we might receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need. Now we're continuing that conversation concerning this high priesthood. For every high priest, okay, now we've switched. Now we're talking about the human high priest. For every high priest chosen from among men is appointed to act on behalf of men in relation to God, interceding. to offer gifts and sacrifices for sin. Now he can deal gently with the ignorant and the wayward, since he himself is beset with the same weaknesses. So a human can relate to a human, right? That's why the Son of Man came as a human, to be able to relate to the humans. This is beautiful if you look at it. If you think about God, the creator of heaven and earth, if you think about God, the majestic God, if you think about God, all-powerful, all-knowing, all-omniscient, I mean, there aren't many words to describe the vastness and the greatness of God. And you think about him emptying himself out and coming to this earth, being born of a woman, and coming and walking and getting his feet dirty and getting his hands dirty and getting sweaty and looking around and growing up from a child up to a man and facing everything that we've had to face. You think about where he came from to where he came to, and you think about why did he do it. That's the message of the gospel. The high priest came in a completely human way and ministered on our behalf before God. It says, so Christ did not exalt himself to be made high priest, but it was appointed to him who said, you are my son, today I have begotten you. As he also says in another place, you are a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. In the days of his flesh, Jesus offered up prayer and supplication with loud cries and tears to God, who was able to save him from death. And he was heard because of his reverence. Although he was a son, he learned obedience through what he suffered. And he, being made perfect, he became the source of eternal salvation to all who obey him, being designated by God as high priest in the order of Melchizedek. We'll cover Melchizedek, but probably not till chapter 7. Today I want to talk about, introduce this idea, this concept of the high priest. We've looked at the high priest's dress, we've looked at his responsibilities and his place, and our author here says that Jesus is the high priest. So he's drawing a picture here. He's drawing not a comparison, but a picture. This is Jesus. These guys were Jewish people. They understood the high priest. They knew what the high priest did. They had been there. They had seen the robes. They had heard his robe jingle. They had been in the pomp and circumstance. They had been at the offerings. They knew. They had been at the celebration. They had been at the worship time. They knew what was going on. They had seen this high priest standing on the steps before the people. They saw him turn and walk into. They would have been resonating with this in a way that would have just been beautiful for them. We don't have that. We don't have that picture in our world. Really, we don't. Think of your favorite, music artist standing up at the end of the thing, going thank you, and turning around and walking off stage or whatever. But we don't have the concept of the high priest anymore. We don't need the concept of the high priest, except to try to understand what Jesus did on our behalf, what he did for us in acting as the high priest. Number one, the high priest is chosen from men and for men, right? So we're talking about the earthly high priest, the priesthood that God established. He called Aaron to be the high priest, to intercede for men and to be the intermediary between God and man, right? He offered up the sacrifices for the sins of the men. He offered up sacrifices for his own sins, we see. But he was called from men to men. The ministry was to us, okay, on our behalf before God. So he interceded for people. We have priests today in certain denominations, and their role is to be an intercessor. And they, we can't go to God on our own, but we can go to God through someone else. That's the picture of this. That's the picture of the high priest. Okay? I go to God through the temple. I go to God through the worship. I go to God through the high priest. And every year, that high priest is going to, on my behalf, offer a sacrifice to God to cleanse me from my sins. And the next year, he'd have to do it again. And the next year, he'd have to do it again. And the next year, and the next year, and the next year, and the next year. It was perpetual. It was perpetual. I had someone text me this week. They said that they had an Orthodox Jewish friend who had passed away, and they were struggling with faith. I mean, this person wasn't a Christian, wasn't a follower of Jesus. So what's going to happen to their eternal soul? What is that? And looking to me for some kind of, clarification on that. And I said, well, I only have one problem. What do they do with sin? Sin has to be dealt with, one way or another. And there's no more sacrifices being made on behalf of Israel, because there's no more temple, and there hasn't been for 2,000 years. And so, if we don't accept Jesus as our substitute, as our sacrifice for sin, then how do we get exonerated? How is it paid for? They texted me back and said, I thought about that too. So we just pray for them, we pray for the family. Number two, the human high priest understands our weakness. Understands our weakness. When you're relating to someone and trying to make a connection with them and trying to develop a relationship with them, it's nice to have things in common, isn't it? I mean, when Lee and I got married, I was from Nebraska and she was from Iowa. And this could cause a problem in our marriage. Fortunately, we were living in Kansas at the time, so that was the buffer zone, that was the neutral zone. But then 5 years later, we moved to Iowa. Now all of a sudden, I'm totally outnumbered, right? I mean, literally, I'm indoctrinated into Iowa, and by the fact that I became a part of the Rickle family, I'm now indoctrinated into the University of Iowa. So that's got to be, even though I never knew anything about it, I think their mascot's kind of silly, but nevertheless, I'm perky, right? Oh, I'm just kidding. So I'm just saying, what I'm just saying is that, I had to come along and change the way I was doing things in order to understand her. And this is what gave me solace. Paul said, I become all things to all men that I might win some to Christ. And so I put this little phrase in there. I said, I become all things to Lee that I might have a happy marriage. Or be able to watch the TV on Thursday nights. So sometimes we have to recognize that we have the same weaknesses as other people. Okay? We can't get all high and mighty on people. We've got to understand our weakness as well as theirs. If we're going to connect with them, we're going to have to accept them for who they are, even if they're a Nebraska fan. Still got to accept them. We still got to love them until we can convert them. All right? And that's the way it works. You love them until you can convert them. Number three, the high priest offers sacrifice for himself. Okay? For his own sins, for his own shortcomings. He must offer his sacrifices for him. Why? Because he's sinning. Right? Because he's not perfect. Because, and there again, this had to happen over and over and over and over and over again. Every year it would happen. Every year he would have to do the same thing over and over again. When this guy died, a new priest was sanctioned, and he had to do the same thing. Okay? Sacrifices for the people and sacrifices for himself. Number four, every high priest is appointed by God. God started this by appointing Aaron, right? And then he appointed the tribe of Levi to be the priests. And the priests were the ones who ministered to God. They were the ones who carried the poles. They were the ones who set up the labor. They were the ones who built the fire. They were the ones who offered the sacrifices. They were the ones who divided up the sacrifices so the family had some meat and this one over here. They were the ones that knew all this stuff. They were the ones that set up the menorah. They were the ones that took the bread out and put new bread in. They were the ones that were ministering to the temple, that were ministering to God. That was the priest. Okay? The high priest was a part of them. Only his job was to go before God and offer the sacrifice for them. Number 5, Jesus is now perpetually the high priest. The Bible says that he's ascended into heaven, that he sits at the right hand of the throne of God, and that he lives to make intercession for us on our behalf. In other words, Jesus is the intermediary. He is the ultimate high priest. He sits at the right hand of God, and when I'm accused by Satan, Jesus said, no, he's part of me. Right? He's my defense lawyer. And he's also the judge, which is a pretty nice combination to have. And he has declared me innocent through my faith in him by the blood of the cross. That's what my faith has procured, if you will. I am now not the same person I was before I knew Christ. Was I a sinner before I knew Christ? Absolutely. Do I still sin now? Absolutely. But I have an advocate. I have one who sits at the right hand. I have Jesus, the high priest, ministering on my behalf and on your behalf. It's a beautiful picture. It's a beautiful thing. So that my forgiveness then isn't not just a one-time thing. As long as Jesus remains at the right hand of God, my forgiveness is intact. It's at work all the time. It follows me wherever I go. It's my aura. It's my aroma. It's my smell. It's who I am. I am forgiven. That's what God declares. I don't say that. I'm just a wretched person. But God declares me forgiven because of Christ. And that's what matters, because I'm not going to have to give an account to any of you. But I will to God. And when I stand before the judgment seat of God, I will have no excuses. And if my life is laid before my eyes, I will stand there and shake. And I will look up at my Father and I will say, there by the grace of God. There by the blood of Jesus. That's it. That's all that can save us. That's it. I can't say I was a pastor for 30 years. I can't say that. Because there's going to always be a counter to that. Yeah, but what kind of a pastor were you? How many people did you yell at in that time? How many thoughts did you have of killing people? There's going to be things that are going to be against me. And I just know that, and I just understand that. Now, I don't have to live in that, and I don't want that to be something that occupies my mind. I want to live free, and I intend to live free, and I live free because of the Spirit. But there's going to be times when I mess up. Those times are covered by Christ. Always covered by Christ, who was appointed by God to be a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. His priestly ministry doesn't end. That's the beauty of this. That's the beauty of it. His sacrifice doesn't stop. I used to think that once I accepted Christ, then from then on, it was up to me to be perfect. And about 2.5 seconds later, I realized I couldn't do it. And so I really struggled with this because I live in America, and America rewards good behavior, and we reward success, and you're good if you do this, right? And that's our value. My value now doesn't come from America. My value comes from Christ. And I now receive my value based on what he has done on my behalf, not based on anything that I have done or haven't done. Right? And that's the beauty of it. And the only one that I'm responsible for, ultimately, at the end of the day, is myself. I can't be responsible for Lee. I can't be responsible for Ben. I love them both. I want them to succeed, and I want to do everything I possibly can to help them. But they're going to have to stand on their own as well. And so will you. And here's the good news. You're not standing on your own. You're standing on Christ. Right? He is the one. And so I can relax a little bit. Right? I don't have to, I can stop writing down all those bad things that I've done. And stop writing down all the good things that I've done. And comparing the two, and hopefully at the end of the day I come up with more good than bad. No, we don't need to do that. Because Christ has taken our place. He has died for us. He is our high priest. Number 6, Jesus cried out to God to save him from death. In the days of his flesh, when Jesus was on this earth, when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane, he offered up prayers and supplications with loud cries and tears to him who was able to save him from death, and he was heard because of his reverence. And he was heard. God heard him. God heard him crying out. God watched as his son wept. God saw the sweat and drops of blood that Jesus sweat. God saw that. He understood that. He heard that. He knew that. And when he said, Father, if there's any way for this cup to pass from me, let it pass. And God heard it all. And God saw it. And then God heard his son say, not my will, but thy will. Not my will, but thy will. You see, we can want things. It's not bad to want things. And it's not bad to want out of suffering. And it's not bad to want out of pain. But at the end of the day, it's not my will, but it's God's will. Father, let your will be done in my life. And I won't blame you. And I won't call you names. Because I know that you have a purpose for my suffering. Jesus, when he relinquished that, when he said, not my will, but thy will, understood that there was a purpose, there was a reason for the suffering that he was about to embark on. There was a reason for it. And that reason was you and me. It was us. As he sweat and called out in his flesh, God, I'm going to save the world. Can't you save me? Can't we do it some other way? And the Father was silent. 3 times Jesus went to pray. 3 times God was silent. Sometimes I think that I deserve to hear from God. God, I deserve this. I deserve to hear from you. I deserve to. Wow. I don't deserve anything. I deserve to die and go to hell. I deserve to burn eternally. That's what I deserve. But by God's grace, that's not what's going to happen. Number 7, Jesus is the source of eternal salvation. Look at what this verse says here. Although he was the Son of God, he learned obedience. He came to an understanding of a deeper understanding, maybe, if you could think that way, through his suffering of who God is and how God works. I'm here to tell you today, I'm not a masochist, and I'm not a big fan of suffering. But I'm here to tell you that it can have positive effect. It can get us to the place of where God is all we have. And we finally find out that God is all we need. Christ, through his suffering, was obedient to the point of death. And God honored that obedience and raised him from the dead and released all of humanity from that penalty of death if we choose to follow Christ. Sometimes I think I don't really understand, and I know that I don't, what God has done and how God has done it. But I know one thing, that Jesus Christ is interceding for me on my behalf. He's standing in the gap for me. He's giving me access to the only resource that matters, the throne of God. The veil, when Jesus died, the veil was torn. The veil that separated the holy place from the Holy of Holies was torn from the top to the bottom. It was torn. And the Holy of Holies was opened up. And now it's open for you and for me to come in and sit at the feet of God, to come in and intercede for others around us, to go to God's throne and say, Father, what do you want? What do you want me to do in this situation? What is your desire? What is your will? Lead me, guide me, direct me. Or to say, Father, I know that you want this person to come to Christ, but they're just being stubborn, and they just, and we can intercede on that way as well. Intercession. Peter says that we are a royal priesthood, that we are a holy nation, that we are the church, the people of God. And a certain position there. There's certain power there. There's certain authority there. Sometimes we just get pushed around too much, I think, instead of taking a stand for Christ. Not just for ourselves, but for the hundreds of thousands of people who still don't know him. For our neighbors. For friends in the church. I did a funeral service last Monday for a young man that was a part of Grace Baptist Church. One of the things that I said, because I know this to be true, because I've experienced this in the last 6 months of my own life. After the service, all those people who were there, they get up and they go home. Next day, they get up and they go to their jobs. They go back to doing whatever it is they did. And that's normal. That's fine. But that person who's sitting there as a widow, a widower, they don't get to go back to their normal life. Their life will never be the same. They have to adjust to a whole new life, a whole new way of living, and a whole new way of thinking. And it's a scary and it's a lonely place. And the body of Christ ought to be rallying around these people, supporting them, and encouraging them, and loving them, and holding their hand through this time, and listening to their stories. I think it's the least we can do. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for this day that you've given us today. Thank you for your grace and your mercy. Thank you for your love. Lord, I know there's no other way to you but through Christ. And if it's good enough for you, it's certainly good enough for us. So we'll just say thank you. And we'll love you. And we'll just walk in the manner worthy of our calling. In Jesus' name. I think the role of priest and the intercession